and welcome back. Welcome to video number 2 in my 3-part video series about live music at your wedding. In this second video, I continue my conversation with David Fletcher, owner, musician, and band leader and MC of New York's Best Musicians and Washington's Best Musicians. In this video, David and I discuss the quartet, the difference and benefits of a band and a DJ, and the timeline. But before you go and watch the video, let me introduce myself. I'm Michelle Mays, your Chief Concierge for Luxury Wedding Planning in New York and owner of Renee Michelle Events. I started and created this channel to help brides and grooms just like yourself navigate your wedding planning process stress-free. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, be sure to click subscribe and the notification bell so you'll know when new videos are posted. What about quartets and string quartets? I mean, I always like the idea of having a quartet at the cocktail hour or at the beginning of a wedding ceremony per se. So being Washington's best and New York's best, do you get requests for that? And how do you fit that into what the client is looking for?
Oh, sure. Well, live music is really important for the ceremony. I mean, obviously you can do it with tracks, and some people do. You can do it with a bagpiper. Some people do it with that way. I think the classical music for the ceremony sets the right tone, and very often there's a ceremony outside. So yeah, that's an important moment. Now, in terms of quartets, most people get a trio because it's really hard to tell the difference musically between a string quartet and a string trio, except a string trio is 1/4 less expensive. It's 3 people instead of 4. And the other distinction is often string trios will consist of 2 violins and cello, or violin, flute, cello, both of which work for that kind of distinctive sound that people are used to hearing, the canon and D kind of stuff. The advantage of that is they can play outside, they don't need amps, they don't need electricity, they can play anywhere. The disadvantage is it does cost a little more to get those musicians to the ceremony. It's more cost effective to get the people that are playing in the band to play the ceremony. Now, in our case, in the band I'm in, I'm going to be immodest for a second. Between the 8 people in the band, there are 14 music degrees. So everybody in the band is also a very well-trained musician that can play classical and jazz and top 40. That's not universally true of all bands, but in many it is. So hiring a guy to play an extra hour for an event is cheaper than hiring somebody to drive there specifically for that hour. But yeah, I think classical music for the ceremony is important, and I think there'll always be a need for harpists and string trios and things like that. I think the other big distinction, and people often ask this, what's the difference between a band and a DJ? And I don't mean to bash DJs, because I have good friends that are DJs. I think a lot of people, it's perfect for them. I think one big difference is a DJ is constant. It's a constant sound. There's no break in that sound from beginning to end. Now, some people want that. Sometimes party planners say, I don't want there to be a moment of silence in this whole wedding. I just want it to be thumping and flashing lights and smoke and, foam or whatever else you do. I think with live music, there are spaces between the songs and spaces between the notes. And there's different styles that vary in volume. There's peaks and valleys. With a DJ, it's one constant plateau of this is the sound and jump around.
What about time frame and the length of time that it takes to find someone who's going to play the music that you want, or even have the music collection that you're interested, you being the bride and groom are interested in having at your wedding? You're getting married a year from now. Let's use whatever date this is being seen. I say as soon as possible, because I'm all about eliminating the stress, eliminating the stress that comes with planning a wedding. But from your professional standpoint, what time frame would you recommend?
Okay, I'm going to say something now that you're going to think of as heresy, and you're probably going to hang up and never speak to me again. So we've had people call us a few days before for their major dance band, and they're spending, you know, $8,000 to $10,000 on that band. So we've had people call us 2 or 3 days before a wedding. So, by the way, we forgot to get the band, and are you available Saturday? In this business, and this is good for brides to know, and should set their minds at rest, there's always more musicians and bands than there are weddings. There's always more musicians and bands than there are weddings. You can always find somebody, DJ, band, whatever, a few days before the wedding, and we've done that. Sometimes the advantage of a few days before the wedding is there's very little likelihood of it changing. And people found that out with COVID, and I'll digress for a second. So the advantage of booking things a little closer is you're not likely to change it. So I would say the ideal time is probably 4 to 6 months before. You know, and now we get people that will book us up a year ahead of time, and that's great. Mm-hmm. But I think 4 to 6 months before is kind of about the right time. Do you agree with that? Is that about the time, or I know you said as soon as possible?
No, I am of two mindsets. I think 4 to 6 months is a safe place, because you also have those changes and all, you know, music style or what have you. And for me, weddings are about connection. So when the bride and groom meet a vendor, if there isn't any connection or, like the term, chemistry, then that causes tension, because it's already a high tension situation. You know, it's one of the most important days in the bride and groom's life. So I say as soon as possible. 4 to 6 months is ideal, because also in the planning process, you're still working out logistics. And when I say logistics, not the place of the wedding, but what am I going to wear, or who's coming, or this color change, or something may not be in stock. So 4 to 6 months is good. I agree with that one. 1 day before or 2 days before, I don't know. I hope you enjoyed this video. Honestly, sitting down with David, I learned a lot about a quartet. Something I really enjoy about weddings, and how they play a part in a wedding ceremony, or even your cocktail hour. And the time frame. David and I differed a little bit about the time frame, but it's an important element, and it plays a role, as I mentioned, in having a stress-free wedding planning journey. So before you go, be sure to click subscribe and the notification bell, and come back to watch part 3, the final video, when David and I discuss more about the band, as well as your budget and planning your selection for who you will have play at your wedding. Now watch this frame popping up now. If you didn't get an opportunity to watch video number 1, the introduction for my conversation with David Fletcher, it's popping up now. And be sure to come back to watch the 3rd and final video of the video series about live music at your wedding. I'll see you in the next video.